The Lions have to go back to work. They've got plenty to fix if they want to come out on the other end of the scoreboard this Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. I wanted to give them a blueprint for success, so I spent the afternoon chatting with Jamal Cadoura, a Detroit Lions beat writer for Rant Sports, to get his take on everything relating to the Honolulu Blue and Silver. First of all, Jamal, we want to welcome you back to the Two-Man Advantage podcast as we dive into what the heck happened to the Lions on Sunday as they gave that game back to the Chargers.
It's good to be back, man.
So, first and foremost, in your estimation, what happened on Sunday, buddy?
To be honest, I think they were overwhelmed. I really think they were overwhelmed. You were missing, I believe, was it 2 starters on the offensive line, and I think that caused a lot of their offensive rhythm to collapse. If you notice, Matthew Stafford was flustered in the pocket. The run game struggled, and they just disrupted their whole flow and rhythm.
I know when we look at exactly what happened, obviously the defense forced 3 turnovers, but the offense also gave it away twice. And anytime you force 3 turnovers on defense, you're expected to win that game. So why do you think the offense was so ineffective after moving up and down the field in the first half? What do you think was their biggest Achilles heel in half number 2?
I would have to say offensive line. It was evident that Matt Stafford was pressured. There were some plays where the minute he dropped back, there were unaccounted for defenders rushing him and sacking him or flustering him. So I would have to definitely pin this on them. I thought the play calling was ineffective at points, but also, the guys up front. Laken Tomlinson struggled a little bit. Cornelius Lucas obviously just isn't the right tackle that the Lions need. So that was the main issue.
And defensively, certainly, they were good in the first half, but there was wide receivers, particularly Kenny Allen, who was running straight open in the game against the Lions. I think he had 15 receptions, a career day for him, over 100 yards receiving. So what do you think contributed to the defensive lapses in San Diego? Did you think he played a factor, or do you think it was something else?
Well, I never want to discredit the opposing team. Obviously, Phillip Rivers is a tremendous quarterback. He's intelligent, he's got a strong arm, and he's very precise. What I think was a deciding factor was, Rasheed Mathis was exposed. Rasheed Mathis is an older cornerback, and I think his age is catching up to him. Another thing that people are pretty much forgetting is the pass rush. The Lions really couldn't execute the pass rush after their first few defensive drives. Rivers, although he was passing quickly, he had time to stand back there and pick that defense apart. He ended up passing for over 400 yards, so we see it when the Lions can't rush the passer. The secondary really is a bit exposed.
So moving forward, Jamal, what do you think is the biggest thing the Lions have to correct and the biggest thing you'll be looking for as they head into the game against Minnesota?
I would have to look at offensively the offensive line, specifically the right tackle position. Laken Tomlinson's a rookie. He has room to improve, and I didn't think he was all that terrible. Cornelius Lucas at right tackle is, oh man, it's a pretty puzzling position, and it's a pretty disturbing position at that. You know, when Ladron Waddle's not in there, that side of the line struggles, and it lets in a lot of pressure. I would also look to see some more efficiency from Matthew Stafford. I felt that, yeah, he was pressured, but he had abysmal play against the Chargers in the third quarter. Those 2 interceptions were detrimental, and he had no rhythm and just no consistency. Defensively, the pass rush. The pass rush just wasn't getting home after the first few drives, and unfortunately, Phillip Rivers was able to pick them apart.
No, when we look at Stafford going into the season, everyone said this is a big year for Stafford. It seems like we've heard that same line for 3 or 4 years now. But when you look at Stafford, what were you most disappointed about with his performance, and what do you think you can take away positively, if anything at all?
I have to say I was really disappointed with his decision making. And I'm really disappointed because it still seems like he has trouble deciphering defenses. I mean, even throughout some of those pressures, it felt like he was holding on to the ball a little too long, where I was hoping to see some more decisiveness from him, some more authority with the offense. Some positives. In the first quarter, he was looking accurate, a bit more accurate than we're used to. He was hitting receivers in stride, which is something I've always wanted to see from him. Because a lot of times if you see Stafford, he was throwing the ball maybe a little bit behind the receivers, a little bit too far, whereas in the first half he was precise. But, I mean, he has to continue to improve. I mean, it's like you said, this is the line that everybody has used and replayed time and time again. It's supposed to be a big year. It's, you know, he's going to come out of his shell, but I'm still waiting to see that.
So moving into the game against Minnesota, what are you looking for the Lions to execute early and often in that game?
I want the Lions to attack deep. I feel that since the Lions are so conservative, defensive lines and opposing defenses, are playing them much more aggressively. And since the Lions are taking the whole, we'll take what the defense can give us mentality, well, you know, defenses don't really have to be all that complex with them. I want to see the Lions attack deep, you know, open the playbook. And I think that will essentially help their offense move the football and get a little bit more creative.
To your point about moving the offense down the field, all we heard about during the preseason is how the Lions offense will be more aggressive in the second year in the system. And certainly the second half of that game, the offense kind of went into a shell. I mean, they couldn't sustain drives. They turned the football over twice in that third quarter. And by the time they got back into it in the fourth quarter, it was too late. And certainly giving up more than 30 points in one half is a troubling statistic as well. So I'm wondering what your takeaway is about Joe Lombardi and moving forward offensively for the Lions throughout the course of the season. Do you think Lombardi should be on thin ice or no?
Absolutely. I'm not ready to write Joe Lombardi off yet because, I mean, look at the Patriots last year, and the Patriots started their season. I mean, the first few games, they struggled, and they looked pretty horrific, and they went on to win the Super Bowl and be a highly competitive team. My problem with the offense is just as I stated, they don't take enough shots deep, and it forces defenses to constantly keep everything in front of them, and it limits the Lions' playbook. I felt like, you know, year two and Matt Stafford and Golden Tate seem to be on different pages. You know, everybody looks a little confused and disoriented. That shouldn't be happening. I mean, does Lombardi still have a chance to clean that up? Absolutely. He needs to refine this offense and he needs to make sure that everybody has a good understanding and they're on the same page. But if, game 5, game 6 comes around and this offense is still staggering and, they're not really not only scoring, but they're not even moving the ball, that's a problem. I mean, if you look at the game against San Diego, yes, the Lions' defense, it was horrendous. Nobody can hide that. But because the offense couldn't sustain any drives, as we all have been saying, that defense was exhausted. That defense was forced to be on the field a lot longer than they wanted to. So I'd look for Lombardi to clean a lot of things up.
When you look at the Lions' first half of the schedule in September, obviously going into the game against the Chargers, I thought it was a game the Lions should have and probably could have and probably should have won. And you looked at the game against Minnesota after the way they played last night. You're a bit more confident about their chances in that game. But if they don't win against Minnesota, I'm under the impression that they won't win a game for the entire month of September. Do you share that same sentiment? And what do you think about, after watching the Lions play, what do you think about their schedule moving forward and their chances to win multiple games this year?
It's hard to assess that after one game, but if we're going to go on the basis of this game, I am not too confident. I am not too confident even going into Minnesota. Minnesota's going to be a desperate team, and Minnesota's a division rival. And as we see in the NFL, I mean, look at how the Rams are always competitive with the Seattle Seahawks, because division rivals seem to have one another's numbers. So if the Lions drop that game, I still think they'll beat Denver at home, but I wouldn't give them a playoff chance because statistically speaking, teams that start off 0-2 generally don't make the playoffs. So this is a must-win for both teams, and it's a chance not only to win a game, but to push away from your division rival, but we have to see what they can do.
What happened to Calvin Johnson?
That's a very intriguing question. I mean, that can be Stafford and that can be Lombardi. I mean, Matt Stafford wasn't decisive, but it's the coaching staff's job to say, hey, look, we're going to put our best players in positions to make plays, and I feel like the blame can be distributed all around.
And moving forward, do you think him not playing in the preseason contributed to that at all, or do you think it's just a lack of offensive execution?
Absolutely, I would pin it on offensive execution. Calvin Johnson's a well-seasoned veteran. He's been held out of a lot of preseason games. He never really gets much action in the preseason anyways. So I feel like it was just execution.
And certainly Terrell Austin's defense got plenty of praise going into at the tail end of last year, but as you said, fatigue might have played a factor in the fact that the Lions offense couldn't sustain drives. But defensively, what is your biggest concern other than what you've already mentioned in terms of Rasheed Mathis getting older and the offense not being able to sustain drives?
I would have to say I want to see more of Haloti Ngata. I know he didn't have any action in the preseason and much action in OTAs, but once again, he's like Calvin Johnson, where he's a well-seasoned veteran, and you still expect him to produce. I also have a question mark about Stephen Tulloch. Stephen Tulloch was lit up in that game. I mean, Phillip Rivers completed all 8 passes in his direction, and he missed some tackles, and he just seemed pretty sloppy and slow. So, I mean, there's a couple of players that I would like to see more, and I would certainly hope the Lions can extract more from.
And when we look at Minnesota, obviously, if you watched the game last night, Teddy Bridgewater wasn't all that effective, and the Lions, for what it's worth, can never tackle Adrian Peterson. I know he didn't have a good game last night, but the Lions historically have struggled against him. So what are you looking for the Lions, or what concerns you most about the game with the Vikings?
Adrian Peterson. The Lions cannot let Adrian Peterson beat them because, as you said, I did witness yesterday's game. And Teddy Bridgewater was not effective. In fact, he was inaccurate. He was uncertain. The Lions cannot let Adrian Peterson beat them. He still is Adrian Peterson, and there still is a long way to go in this season. And if the Minnesota Vikings can run the football, that passing game will be much more effective. So they have to shut down AP.
And what will you be watching for early in terms of corrections from the Chargers game going into Minnesota?
Well, as we all know, the NFL is a copycat league. And Minnesota will be looking at San Diego's script and will be hijacking some of it. I expect them to try some of those screenplays. They have a lot of speed players. They have Mike Wallace. They have Adrian Peterson, Cordell Patterson. They have a lot of speed players that can execute those screenplays. So I look for Austin and his defense to be able to shut down those plays and adjust when needed.
And finally, what are you forecasting for this game? Do you think the Lions can get off the mark and get back into the divisional race? I know it's only one game, and one game doesn't define a season, but what are three important keys you'll be looking for the Lions to execute against Minnesota?
Okay, well, of course, you always want your offense to score, so that goes without saying. One thing I look for is the offense sustaining drives. That has to happen because they have to be able to be efficient on the field and able to rest their defense. The second thing I'm going to be looking at is the pass rush. I wanted to see much more of that Lions pass rush. Ziggy Ansah, I want to see Haloti Nada getting in there. I want, just much more of that. Defensively, as I have previously stated, adjustments. Terrell Austin and his unit were not able to adjust and respond properly to whatever Phillip Rivers threw at them. Teddy Bridgewater is no, Phillip Rivers, but at the same time, Minnesota's offense has weapons to work with. So those are the three things I'm going to look for.
And finally, what do you think will be the final score in this game, and what will define the Lions' effort against the Vikings in your mind?
I have the final score, Lions 24, Vikings 17, and I think that the Lions' offense will come around. And what will be the deciding factor is Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, once again, is a seventh-year quarterback. The Lions should have the advantage at quarterback as Bridgewater's in his second year. So he should be able to outplay Bridgewater and guide his team to a victory.
And you're not concerned at all about Minnesota's top 10 ranked defense from a year ago, or because the Lions struggled to move the ball against them as well?
Well, the one thing I'm looking for offensively is, can the Lions pick up the blitz? It seemed like every single time San Diego blitzed them, their offensive line was discombobulated. So Minnesota definitely with Mike Zimmer, I'm sure will have many creative blitzing packages prepared and well executed against the Lions. Now I want to see them respond. I want to see them pick it up, protect Stafford, and air the ball downfield.
And if they don't win this game, what sort of red flags will go up for you for the rest of the season?
I will say that we need to take a look at the coaching staff. I would hate to say that, but if the Lions start 0-2, especially after that mammoth and very disheartening collapse against the Chargers, there might be a flaw in the coaching game, honestly.
In terms of Lombardi or in terms of Caldwell? Or?
I would definitely have to say in terms of Lombardi, I feel like Terrell Austin, somewhat solidified his resume and his credibility much more than Lombardi's abysmal offense did last year.
Well, Terrell Austin won't be getting a head coaching job if his defense continues to give up 30 plus points a game. But
true.
I lied. I have one more for you.
Anything you want, man.
Do you think the loss of Ndamukong Suh played a factor in that game? And do you think Karan Reed not being in played a factor as well in the middle of the Lions defense? Or do you think it was the inability to sustain drives offensively?
I would have to pin it on the offense. The Lions' defense wasn't stellar, but they weren't as much of a detriment as people would think. I mean, They did force 3 turnovers, and one of those was a pick six. They came out swinging out of the gates. It's just I think they were fatigued, and a lot of that comes from the Lions' offense. 3 and out, turnover here, turnover there. That's very deflating. As far as Ndamukong Suh goes, Ndamukong Suh is who he is. He is a phenomenal player, but the Lions did melt down in plenty of fourth quarters while he was on the team. So I don't think the loss of Suh really contributed as much as others would say. I would have to say it was the offense. Karan Reed is going to be I'm not too certain of what type of player he'll be, so I don't really want to pin him as a defining key for that defense.
And when we look at Ndamukong Suh just as a sidebar, I'm wondering if you saw him allegedly step on the head of Alfred Morris, and do you think the NFL made the right decision not to fine him?
Well, Suh is who he is. He's always had the reputation of being a dirty player, and he probably always will, and that's one of the positives that the Lions did by letting him go. They don't have to deal with those distractions anymore. As far as the league's choice, I'll pretty much leave that up to the league. I felt like they made the call if they seemed fit, and Suh will continue to be Suh.
Do you think he should have been fined, though?
Not really.
Okay. All righty, Jamal, we want to thank you for your time this afternoon, and we certainly hope your prediction of the first Lions victory of this season comes true in Minnesota on Sunday.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Let's hope so, because if the Lions split, they'll be in good shape. I had them going 1-1 anyway, so if they can be 1-1, they'll be all right.
They should be 2-0, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah, we'll discuss that later, right?
All right, Jamal, have a great day, and we'll talk soon.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Uh-huh.